Hello all, I hope you are well in these extraordinary times. I would like to welcome you all to the FinTech Finance Virtual Arena where we're hosting you today. In this special arena, we're going to be discussing how to hire, how to get hired, tips of the trade and everything in between when it comes to recruitment. Joining me today all the way from Sydney, we have Dexter Cousins. How are you doing today, Dexter? Are you really upside down or is that Jordan?
No, we're not upside down, and I haven't put a shrimp on the barbie, and a dingo didn't steal my baby. So yeah, we're all good here. Thanks, Ali.
Excellent. I have convinced my 4-year-old that everything in Australia is upside down. Excellent. And we all
that way at the minute, the whole world's upside down. So
absolutely. And joining us all the way from London, from Broadgate, we have Alex. Alex, I'm going to go for pronouncing your surname, but I'm going to muck it up. Alex Chirika?
So close. It's Kirika.
Kirika. Alex Kirika. How's lockdown treating you, Alex? I saw a very funny video of you trying to get your mum to explain what FinTech is.
Yes. So I'm with my family at the moment. I'm just trying to incorporate them into my daily work life. So it's been really good fun, actually. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, the amount of times that people say in any kind of startup, any kind of big bank, it always comes down to the people. But I wanna take a little look back in the before times. Let's look at FinTech as a market. What's the biggest challenges with talent and recruitment circa January 2020?
well, I think it's probably good to point out that London and Sydney would be very different markets. So Sydney's probably, I'd say, run about 2 years behind where London is. So we launched Tier 1 people in 2016. It wasn't really until 2018 where we started to see things really get some traction. So I think it'd be good to kind of put that question to Alex first, because you're probably going to have a far more painful experience than perhaps what I've had pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the main challenge that I've had is getting hiring managers in fintechs to change their mentality when it comes to hiring people from the big banks. There's this massive stereotype that if you work in a big bank, you might not be hands-on enough, or you might be delegating too much or stuff like that. And it's just making sure that those stereotypes are removed and making them understand that actually there are people who work in big banks who are very hands-on. You know, the hierarchy, they don't believe in that either, and they're happy to get stuck into the work. So that's a challenge, trying to make them understand that. The other challenge, I think it's also constantly keeping in pace with the fintech, because they change their decisions hour by hour, always something different. Either they want someone 1 minute and then the specification changes literally a couple of hours later. So it's constantly keeping pace with them. That's what I've seen. But what's it like in Sydney? I'd be curious.
Yeah, it's there's similar challenges actually, Alex. I think that one that you touched on the bank or the banking people coming across. I think rightfully so. We've seen a lot of trepidation when it's come to that, and I think the biggest challenge that we've found is really making this distinction as to what's the right entry point for somebody who's coming from a large corporate environment where they've worked in a corporate to where they can come in and have a chance of success. And I think the key that we've found is really to try and break fintech down into their stages of growth. So if we talk about a startup, typically I will say that's 1 to 50 people. That's a very different business to a business that goes from 50 to 300, and then a very different business again where you go from 300 to 2,000. So we look at examples. I think Revolut, Monzo, really good examples where those businesses have gone through these kind of evolutions in a space of maybe only 4 years. Have been, say, 3 or 4 different businesses. So the key that we found for success is really, at what point does somebody from a big 4 bank or a big bank come in and have an impact? The challenge is always assessing those skills, as you pointed out. that ability to deal with an environment that's constantly changing. I remember, when we did the search for Revolut's Australia country CEO, we took that brief and I think it changed 4 times. But in the 6 months that we were working on that search, the business had gone from 4 million users to 10 million users and 700 employees to 2,000 employees. That's a huge amount of complexity to deal with in a 6-month time frame for any business. So I think these kind of challenges, we've seen, we're very kind of symptomatic of these high growth, rapidly scaling businesses, whether it be fintech or any other tech.
Absolutely. Do you think it's interesting that you've both mentioned the big 4 banks, obviously the UK, very similar to Australia in that market, but looking at the big banks and the cultural difference with your Revoluts, your 86400, is that the new one?
86400, yep.
86400.
Number of seconds in the day.
That's the one. Looking at kind of the different challenges of neobanks entering it, how does that culture actually play into the recruitment process? Is there almost each party almost turning up their nose at each other, or is it completely different?
I think what often gets misunderstood about recruitment is the complexity behind it. A lot of people think that recruiters sit there with a database of people, they get a job brief, and they flick your resumes. And look, a lot do. There's a lot of businesses that do that. But I think when you talk about specialists, of people that are dedicated into an area like fintech, there's so much nuance that goes into that. And I think the reality is that particularly when you're recruiting for startups and rapidly scaling businesses, you have to be absolutely transparent about what the culture is actually like. Not aspirationally what they want to be, but hey, when you get in there, we always joke that it's not riding around on a skateboard, drinking kombucha, dreaming up how to solve world hunger with the blockchain. It's serious work. It's very stressful. So I think they're the kind of key differences that we see when somebody's coming out from a big bank into one of these environments, as well as just, look, you've got a very defined role in a big bank. In a smaller business, it's just, what we call it specialist generalist. You've got to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
The way that I differentiate candidates as well, the reason I'm very blunt and honest, and I say to them, look, on the surface, they have incredible branding, they have a great product, it makes it look as if they wear flip-flops to the office. However, the amount of work and graft necessary for you to get that product is insane. And, sometimes I say to them, look, it's a mess, but this is why they need you. And this is why they need someone like you to come in. And the distinction for me is the candidates who truly have a passion for their job, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's amazing. This is the best challenge that I've needed for this. And the ones that don't really have a passion for their job, they're the ones who are a bit, or maybe not so much. So it's like Dexter said, when it comes to the nuances, it's really finding out who were the candidates that will really thrive and into that business and make the fintech even better, and the ones who are a bit more passive and they don't enjoy the challenge.
And it's such a challenge as well, Alex, right? Because everybody's telling you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
Everybody's figured out what to say in an interview, so much so that we don't even interview now. It's like a pointless exercise, right? But the example that we give is, we're using these competency-based interviews to assess whether somebody's right for the business. It's my 10th wedding anniversary next week. Now, when I had that first date with my wife, we didn't sit there in a restaurant and had a clipboard of questions saying, oh, can you give me an example of when you've broken up with someone? If you found out somebody was cheating on you, how did you react? How did you feel at the time? Which is essentially what we've got in, the interview situations. So we found that hiring for rapidly scaling or rapidly growing businesses just requires a different approach. And I think that's really where people like Alex, myself come in, where you're immersed in the industry. You're not only passionate about it, but everybody in there. you can ask the right questions, you understand the difference between the culture at Revolut and the culture at Monzo, and it's not that one's bad and one's good or better than the other. It's just that it requires a certain type of person. And I think that's kind of one of the, the complexities around hiring that even post-COVID, I don't think is going to go away.
With we got to talk about the pandemic though. Got to talk about the pandemic with that in mind, because it seems kind of nuts that amongst all this, you hear stories of people being made redundant, but then at the same time, Galileo, for example, they announced last week they're going to be hiring another 100 people in, well, not just engineering, in business roles as well. And there seems to be weirdly quite a lot of activity in talent. So what's been, in very kind of broad strokes, what's been the biggest hurdle to overcome looking at executive search and recruitment over the last few weeks?
The biggest hurdle, I feel like it's been being very patient. The way I see it is what's happened is fintechs, they've seen COVID come about and they just said, all right, stop, let's see what's going on. But the majority of them, I think like the mid-level fintechs, if they work in payments, they haven't actually done that bad. They've actually increased in business and they're doing well. So now they're just like, wait, hold on a second. This isn't as bad as we thought it was. Let us slowly get rid of the freezes and continue as normal, because fintechs are technologically advanced. They can onboard very quickly. They have the setup for this situation. So I think they had a panic moment, but now it's kind of slowly thawing away and they will resume back to normal. That's what I've seen in London.
Yeah, I think we've seen something similar here in Sydney, Alex. I think what the distinction I would make is obviously those businesses that are well capitalized, who managed to get funding away. I mean, it's been
Revolut.
Incredible, really. We've had some monster raises since it happened. Zinja, 443 million Aussie or 250 mil US. Judo, 230 mil Aussie. Airwallex, 250 mil Aussie. It's been huge, right? And then I think 10% of it, taking a 5% share in Afterpay. So we've seen massive activity in some areas. I think the challenges that we've seen, we've still got a fairly immature, fintech industry compared to London. We've got a lot of startups, a lot that you could argue perhaps in this next 2 years might not have made it anyway. This next 6 months, I think we'll see a lot of those businesses, unfortunately, go by the wayside. And I think what that's doing is it's creating a sense of unease that even those that are well capitalized are thinking, hang on, let's just see how the next 6 months goes. We've got similar kind of government incentives as to the UK. So we've got JobKeeper's allowance, which I think ends in September. So I think there's just this almost kind of, holding pattern of, hey, we're good, but we don't know what the world's going to be like in 6 months' time. Let's not go too crazy. Still seeing hiring for mission critical stuff in InfoSec, compliance, those areas, engineering. But where we are seeing the cuts, or what I would say are not luxury roles, but things like operations, HR talent, customer success, product managers. They're the areas where we've seen, there's been some losses, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of want to. That's all of the recruiting, how to sort of find the right people. I want to flip it the other way and want to look at the candidates. Now, if you'd obviously been made redundant or you're on furlough, in an ideal world, it's a real cliche, but what kind of skills do you think people should be focused on improving to work in fintech? But also, is there anything that you think candidates should be doing to try and educate themselves with things like startup culture? For example, I saw somebody tweet out, the most important thing you can do right now is binge all of Silicon Valley, which I thought was a fantastic kind of way to kind of understand startup culture. So what should candidates be doing right now?
Oh gosh, recently I've definitely been more of a massive advocate on social engagement and networking quite a lot. So I've been telling my candidates, if they've been made redundant, that they need to have a much more targeted approach. So if they want to work in fintech, I've said, make a list of the 20 fintechs that you find interesting, connect with the CEOs, the COOs, the CROs, or anyone that's relevant to your industry. And if they accept, just drop them a nice message of, thanks a lot for connecting, or I'm interested in fintech. It's a lot more direct, it's a lot more approachable, and your message will be seen because everyone is online right now. And then on top of that, if you can use LinkedIn just by sharing articles, writing articles, getting your opinion out there so you're visible, I think that's something that everyone can quite easily do. I don't know, Dex, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I agree with all of that, Alex. I think it's the challenge for people, and we partnered with FinTech Australia, and the last 6 weeks have been extremely busy, where we launched an initiative called the FinTech Talent Market, where we're trying to connect those who've lost their jobs with FinTech that are hiring. The whole thing's free. We're not charging recruiter fees. It's a LinkedIn group, and we've been doing kind of weekly, two a week, I think, support kind of chats over Zoom, where we've been sharing very similar kind of strategies, Alex, that you've mentioned. I think the key that gets me is I keep getting these calls of, hey, I've got 20 years experience in banking. I want to work in fintech. And we're at the cutting edge of innovation. And the reality is that nobody's going to be excited by anybody who's got 5 years experience in banking, never mind 20.
Yeah.
And what I find that talent, or people when they're out looking for a job, it's almost like they forget all of the stuff that they complain to you and I about, Alex, when they've seen candidates do stupid things. And they forget that to focus on where's the value that you've actually created for the business, right? Don't tell me how many years experience you've got. Don't tell me that you're a financial controller. Show me where you've saved the business money. Show me where you've made the business money. And I think this is if there's one thing that I would ask everybody to do, it's to sit down and really kind of, figure out where is it that I've had an impact in a business. Because I think ultimately, if any business, particularly a startup that's got limited cash, and they're going to, they're only going to hire mission critical positions, they're going to expect that person to make an immediate impact. Yeah. And the more that you can talk about the impact that you've made previously in other businesses, I think the more comfort that you're going to give somebody. And it's a great way to start a conversation. If I'm as a business owner, somebody sends me an email to say, hey, would you like to have a chat? I've got a way that could potentially help you grow your business. I'm open to it. If somebody sends me an email saying, hey, I'm an SEO expert and I'll get you #1 page on Google, who cares? So I think there's this way that people can actually kind of flip it around. And we talk about LinkedIn as being this landing page, right? We try and put it in terms that people will understand. Let's talk about lean startup methodology, product market fit. If you're the product, how do you get a go-to-market strategy? And put it into terms that probably they'll understand, because that's what they've been doing for the last few years in their role. And once you kind of set it up in those terms, people then start to get that actually. I read somewhere the other day, the resume was invented in 1482 by Leonardo da Vinci, right?
Wow.
Still using resumes. We're talking about being at the cutting edge of innovation, right? And we're using resumes as the way to go, hey, here's what I can do for you. So there's so much we've got, video. Alex, you made a point before. I think is absolutely, people underestimate the power of LinkedIn. Because a CEO can see you post something and I'm not there to prevent it. An internal talent person can't prevent it. An EA or PA can't prevent them from seeing it. And so you can immediately contact with these people without any gatekeepers.
Yeah, definitely. I think just one thing you touched upon as well as business acumen and commercial knowledge. That is the one thing that is just absolutely key in any fintech. I think hiring managers, they want to see you be entrepreneurial. They want to see you have this commercial knowledge. And specifically in my sector, hiring and recruiting for financial crime and compliance. You know, if you've worked at HSBC for 20 years, but you've been the no person, they don't want that. They want compliance and financial crime to be on the business's side. They need to see that commercial awareness and entrepreneurship from people. So if there's, I don't know, if you message someone about their business on something they could not improve on, but just something that you're commercially aware about, that's amazing, because you're showing interest. And stuff like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Personally, I've used a variety of recruitment consultants. Some have been phenomenal, who we've used for almost all of on our commercial side, all of our sales stuff. And there's been some who have been waste of time back and forth. And I don't know if that's down to the way we've been handling the recruitment consultant. What advice would you give? What's the most effective way to get as much bang for your buck from your recruitment consultant as possible, so they really kind of understand you inside out? What's the most effective way to use a recruiter?
Well, Ali, let me give you a scenario here. Let's say I'm a recruiter and I called you and said, Ali, I've got an amazing job. You're going to love it. I don't need you to send me a resume. I don't even need you to go for an interview. All I need you to do is turn up on Monday with 4 other candidates, work for free for 3 months, and whoever does the best job gets hired and gets paid. But if that's not you, you get nothing. Would you be up for it?
If you were getting people to do that for me, 100%.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be the one to do it, right?
I'd be very cautious, yeah.
And I think this is the biggest problem when people come to use recruiters, is that's their expectation. You know, we don't work for free. We don't work in competition with other recruiters. We work retained. We work exclusively. And the reason why we do that is because that gets clients best results. And I'm sure Alex would agree with me on this.
100%. I go over quality over absolutely anything. If I know that a client is willing to actually treat me as a consultant, where they're going to listen to the market mapping that I'm giving them, if I'm going to tell them, look, your expectations to find this person are a little bit of, unrealistic given the situation. I need someone who's going to listen, rather than me being a yes man and just say, yeah, I'll get you 5 CVs tomorrow. No, I need to understand you. I need to understand your business. I need you to give me something to work off of, because then my quality is going to be better. The less I get from you, the less, the worse the quality is going to be. So that's my advice to clients. Now for candidates, oh gosh, to get the most out of your recruiter is just be very honest. And I've always said, don't sell yourself to me. I do not want my candidates to sell themselves to me. That's going to be my job when I send them to the client. I need them to be honest with me about what they want, their expectations, their motivations. Because once I get to the crux of that, that's going to help me figure out what the best opportunity is going to be to them.
Absolutely. Does recruitment tend to have that assessment where you're measured almost on, you put forward this number of candidates, or is it always about the bottom line, about the placements?
I've never ever had any client remember me for the number of people that I put forward. I think the best way that I would sum it up, Ali, is my reputation in the market is based on the caliber of individuals that I put in front of my clients and the quality of opportunities that I present to my network. Purely and simply, everything else, all the work that I do, content-wise, branding, personal branding, company branding, all that stuff doesn't mean anything if you don't get those 2 things right. And I was given some advice when I was earlier in my career that it takes years to build a good reputation and only seconds to destroy it. So, I think we're kind of known for the quality aspect rather than quantity.
Yeah, I simply do not like to send more than 2 to 3 CVs, get feedback, and then we refine the search if the role has changed, or if there's something more specific, or if the client doesn't really know what they want, and I give them examples or whatever and we work on it together. But I am not a CV monkey, and I've never branded myself as a CV monkey to just throw 20 CVs and hope that one sticks, because that is not quality.
Is that the industry slang? Because I've experienced that as a hirer, and that is awful.
But Alex, you just mentioned something there that I think is so poignant, and that is that most times the client actually doesn't know what they need.
Yeah.
They'll tell us what they want, but they don't actually know what they need. And it's not until the right person's put in front of them that they go, we often get these briefs, and it's like we call it the search for the blue-eyed unicorn. It's about 5 different people in one.
Yeah.
It's almost like you feel like you've got to go to it's going to be a schizophrenic who's going to be the right person for the job, because it's one of these completely polar opposite kind of qualities that they're looking for in people. And I think the key that we found is as Alex mentioned, if you take the client on that journey of self-discovery, which you can only do by getting feedback, right? So when they meet with people, hey, we're like this, that wasn't quite right. And it's then at the point that you kind of come up and you can play the ace card. But if, you said this before, Alex, and it's such the right approach to have. If you're not brave enough to push back and say, hey, I'm the expert here. And here's something that will kind of make you chuckle, Alex. So we've interviewed, and I've personally interviewed over 300 FinTech leaders here in Australia and some overseas as well. We've tracked their business. We've watched businesses grow. We've watched others go bust. But what was interesting of those 300 plus interviews, less than 1% of those founders or leaders had a background in HR or talent, but they were all experts. Every one of them was an expert. Right?
That's crazy.
And kind of what strikes me is there a talent shortage? Perhaps, but we've got 7 billion people in the world, right? Kind of, surely there can't be a talent shortage. So I think that the challenge is that it's really about educating founders who, let's face it, right? It's like, they need to be the way that they are for the business to be a success. But, they are the experts on everything. And I think that the best thing a founder can do is to get a partner like Alex, partner like us, who is brave enough to stand up and kind of, guide them on that path of the journey that they're about to go on. Because, the reality is the startup bit, that's the easy bit. Once you start to scale, that's really when it gets complex, and you need a lot of help and a lot of friends to take you through that period.
Yeah, and you see some fintechs try to rush it. They hire a lot of people very quickly, but then after 2 years, they actually get rid of all of them and start from scratch because they realize they made bad hires. So there's all these trends. This might be going a little bit off topic, but what's really exciting, and it's really bad to say about COVID, but actually what I can't wait to see is that with the talent shortage now, I feel like it's just opened up completely the talent pool, where if a client of mine wants someone but they live in Switzerland, there is no reason why they can't have that candidate anymore if they can, work from home forever or stuff like that. So for me, that's an exciting prospect. Just means that my candidate pool now is going to completely widen up. What do you think on that, Zex?
Australia is a really strange country.
Okay.
We're really parochial. So I'm from Newcastle in England, and Australia reminds me of, if you could take a mentality and put it into a country, kind of like the Geordie mentality is like the Australian mentality. So it's us against the rest of the world. And so they hate, anything that's kind of outside of, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. So I think it's going to be a struggle for us. The reality is, I think, if you look at London, one of the reasons why London is so successful from a talent perspective is because so open-minded to skills and backgrounds of coming into roles. Whereas here in Australia, it's I had the challenge for the last 4 years of they've got to have 5 years scale-up experience. Well, you guys are you guys are like leading the pack, right? There isn't anybody else who's doing what you're doing. And I think it's actually one of the observations that I've got around, skill shortages. So if you look at technology, it's evolving faster than humans can keep up. So there will always be a skill shortage in tech roles, because we just can't simply keep up with the pace of technology. And so kind of going back to that question we talked about earlier around what are the qualities that you should look for. I think that what I'd love to see come out of COVID is that we really truly start to assess people based on their potential to perform in your environment, with your people, with your resources, who can potentially deliver. And I think that then that demands that there's a different approach to hiring. We said before, we don't believe in resumes, we don't believe in interviews. And the reason being is they don't actually give us any real indication as to how that person will perform in the future in this environment that's going to change anyway in 3 months. The whole point of a job description, it's irrelevant in a fintech because the job changes within the first 3 months.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you so much for this. I've certainly learned a lot about. Where can we find out more about you?
Well, my LinkedIn page. So Broadgate Search. That's the website. Broadgatesearch.com for London recruitment in the finance sector.
Brilliant, excellent. And Dexter, where can we find out more about you guys in Tier 1?
Tier1people.com. We're all over LinkedIn as well. And we also produce and host the FinTech Australia podcast, which I think that's tier1people.com/podcast. If anybody's interested in what's happening in Aussie FinTech.